Now, the Ethiopian government is exporting maize to neighboring Kenya despite facing food shortage itself. It's facing the worst drought in decades, and huge tracts of maize farms have been destroyed by a massive fall armyworm invasion. Focus on Africa's Emmanuel Igunza has this report.
Months of an acute shortage of maize has forced Kenya to seek help from beyond its borders, importing its staple food from as far as Mexico, South Africa and Zambia. This consignment is the latest to arrive at the border from neighboring Ethiopia. Kenyan officials say this is just a short-term measure to ease prices of maize flour that have skyrocketed.
By the time we received the crop from Ethiopia, I am sure they had enough, because they had a bumper harvest in Ethiopia before the current shortage which they could be having. And by that time, they were ready to avail. And it was not much, really. I think it was something like slightly over 30,000 metric tons.
But it's not just Kenya that has benefited from Ethiopian maize exports. An estimated 500,000 tons was exported this year to other countries in East Africa that were facing severe drought, a situation that Ethiopia itself is currently tackling. While the maize exports might have brought relief to its neighbors, many here in Ethiopia have remained with many questions. In fact, one editorial was very critical, calling this move baffling, coming at a time when the country was facing serious food shortages, and the country has already appealed for $1 billion in humanitarian assistance. That money will go into helping more than 8 million people facing starvation in Ethiopia following 3 seasons of no rains. Crops have failed and some regions are experiencing emergency levels of hunger, just one stage below famine according to UN standards. The government has struggled to defend why it exported so much needed food.
Because we are neighboring countries, because, you know, even we have people speaking the same language around Borana, it may be people-to-people relationship. When there is a problem, it is an effort that we appreciate.
It's a point supported by the Kenyan government.
But for me, I want really to thank the people and the government of Ethiopia, because they came through for us when we really had a distress. And they shared what they had with us because of good neighborliness. For me, I take it more to be, they saw we had a bigger problem in Kenya than what they had in Ethiopia, and they were willing to share what they had.
Experts are warning that Ethiopia is still not yet out of the woods, and as the country struggles to feed its people, it's yet to be seen if this act of charity to its neighbors could prove to be more costly. Emmanuel Igunza, BBC News, Addis Ababa.
Well, let's bring in Dominic Walubengo. He's the director of the Forest Action Network and a food security expert. He joins me from Aberdare in Kenya. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. What do you make of this situation? You know, Ethiopia exporting maize and at the same time seeking international help, humanitarian help.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the program. First of all, Ethiopia does not consider maize as its staple food. Ethiopia prefers to have wheat and teff. So anytime Ethiopia has maize, Ethiopians have maize, they prefer to sell it and then buy wheat or buy teff. And this is the situation. In Kenya, maize is a staple food. So they'll buy it from anybody. It's not a question of helping. In Kenya, we've got a saying called willing buyer, willing seller. And I think this is what's happening.
So with the money that they're getting, if they're buying that wheat, how is it that the situation is still as is? I mean, they're still facing a food crisis.
Well, the maize they're selling to Kenya is sold at about $360 per ton, and they're able to import wheat at $260 a ton. So they're actually saving money, and they prefer to sell the maize and buy wheat. It may be that perhaps they have not organized to buy the wheat in time, but that's their preference, wheat and teff.
When people look at the situation in Ethiopia, one would ask the question, how difficult is it for the balance to be struck between trying to save your people from starving and actually trying to make a buck?
I think the issue is also the tastes of the people. We have got a situation in Kenya where we say people are hungry and yet there are potatoes and we have got beans, but they don't consider potatoes and beans as food. They only consider maize as food. Now in Ethiopia, people do not consider maize as food. They prefer to have wheat and teff. So they may have maize, but they'll still be hungry. And this is a big problem for the government also.
Are there any examples, similar examples across the continent where people actually are facing starvation and yet there's some food that can actually be eaten?
Yes, we had a similar situation in Malawi a few years ago, where they had potatoes, but they did not have maize, and they thought they did not have food. But now Malawi has educated its communities to accept potatoes as food. And the result is now Malawi has extra maize to sell even to Kenya. So this does happen.
It does happen. Interesting thoughts there from you, Dominic Walubengo, Director of the Forest Action Network and food security expert. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Sophie Ikenye.